family, it's Tasha, MAMABEAR Prepping. So today, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if it's your first time. We just talk about preparedness overall, emergency preparedness, preparing for natural disasters, things that might happen to you and your family, and just getting ahead of that stuff, preparing and doing things to make your quality of life for you and your family much smoother and run better when you guys go through something. So really all I do is talk about what me and my family are preparing for, things that we do, and share that with you. So today what I wanted to do was talk to you about food hacks when it comes to food preservation. We do a lot of food preservation here, right? Putting food up, preserving food to make it last longer on your shelf, right? As we know, a lot of food these days, you buy it and it's expiring very quickly, or that expiration date is right around the corner. It's not, years from now, like some of the packaging used to be. And so you have to think about that. You have to think about what can you do to preserve that food to make it last the longest it can possibly last on your shelves, okay? And so there's a lot of things that I've learned over the years. Either people have told me, I've learned by default, whatever it was that had to do with food preservation and some just tips. And so that's what I'm going to do. I don't know how many I have here. I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 for you today. And this is just to get your mind thinking. I know that a lot of you that do this for your family already, it's going to make you think about things that you do as well. Please share that in the comments below so that we all learn from each other, because this is obviously not an inclusive list, okay? So first thing I have is, I learned this I probably learned this, picked this up from a subscriber, I don't know, over the last year, right? Might have been a year and a half ago. And they were talking about how they cook and then dehydrate. So a lot of people dehydrate food, right? Dehydrate fruits, vegetables, all types of stuff, right? People are dehydrating. But what this subscriber was talking about was actually cooking certain foods, like the things that take a little bit longer, like rice and like beans, and cooking them and then dehydrating them so that you can keep them longer. But because you had already cooked them, when you dehydrated them, they were cooked. Therefore, it takes less to, basically, you just have to rehydrate the food, and then it's able to be eaten, right? You're essentially just having to rehydrate it, which is much less water than actually having to cook it. It's less time, because really it's just whatever time it is to get it warm enough to eat, okay? Again, though, if you're eating or in a situation where you can't have fire or you can't warm it up for whatever reason, the food is already cooked. And so you don't have to worry. Maybe you're on the go, maybe you're crunched for time. And so instead of waiting however long it takes to, say, boiling that pot of rice, if it's cooked and dehydrated already, really you're just adding, your liquid to rehydrate it, and then that's it, and it's ready to go. Okay. So I love that idea, cooking stuff and then dehydrating it, okay? And specifically, they were talking about things that take longer, like rice and beans. A lot of people will say, a lot of channels that are in this niche, right, in this area of preparedness, will tell you, the experts will tell you, oh, beans is not that good of a product in the sense of, hey, for real good beans, you got to soak them overnight, and then you have to cook them down, and you got to get that flavor, infused in them. And so a lot of people shy away from beans because the process can be quite lengthy, okay? It doesn't have to be that long, but for beans to turn out the way you really, really like them, it takes a little bit. Well, this tip would work perfectly, and that's cooking them and then dehydrating, okay? Next tip I have is forever foods. There's a lot of foods that if you keep them right, meaning you keep them in cool, dry places, you keep them away from the elements, you keep them away from any kind of condensation or water, let's say, in storage, that they will potentially last forever. Tons of food, rice, beans, pasta, honey, soy sauce. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on, right? There's a ton. I've done a couple videos now. I'll try to link it below on forever foods. And I'm a big fan of stockpiling, not everything, but stockpiling staples. Stockpiling things and the basics that I know that I need in order to make several meals and come up with several different meal ideas to feed my family on the basics, on the bare minimum staples, okay? You don't need all this extra stuff that is out there on the shelves for you to buy, right? flavoring agents. Really, there's only a handful of flavoring agents or flavoring enhancers is what I call it that you need. You know, if you have a garden or even an indoor garden where you were growing onions and garlic, baby, you are already way ahead of the game. You throw some herbs in there as well, it's fire. Okay. And so as long as you've just, you know, got your pepper, got your salt, maybe you have a seasoning as well, you know, stockpiled. But basically you could stick to that salt, pepper, and then what you get from your garden, those enhancers, or your stockpiling enhancers. Soy sauce to me is an enhancer, right? Honey is an enhancer, right? And so these things have multiple uses as well as far as forever foods. A lot of the stuff that lasts forever, you can use in multiple ways, like vinegar, like baking soda, like liquor. Like those things last forever if kept right, and they can be used for a plethora of ways and things in your home, okay? And so they make up forever foods, but they also make up what I call, you know, your core foods, your core items that every household needs to have and needs to stockpile so that you have them. So if you go through a situation, go through a storm, go through a situation where the shelves are empty, whatever, any kind of collapse right around you, you're ready to go, okay? And then you're gonna be okay. Next thing I have is how to store your canning jars. So utilizing space, we all know jars are pretty clunky and big. They take a lot of space. At times, depending how you're using them, they can be stacked, right? So in this sense, utilizing them, if they're empty, it does you no justice to just have cases and cases of jars empty, stacked up. They're not full of food. That's not helping you. But you could fill them with water in the meantime, can it so that it's viable water when you open it, and keep your empty jars like that. And again, they can still be stacked, so you can pressure can your water, get your water preserved in the jars, put them back in the boxes, and you could stack it, okay? It's not so much like food where you're worrying about seals popping and all of that stuff, okay? You don't want seals to pop either with water. However, it's not as dire as it is with food. With food, it's an issue because it's botulism. There's a lot of stuff that you have to worry about when we talk about keeping jars of food, okay, and how to keep them. So utilize your empty jars and make them do a job for you. Don't let them just sit around empty, not doing anything, collecting dust. You need to be utilizing them, and that's by putting food in them, and or if you have a ton because you're stockpiling, you want to make sure you have a lot of empty ones ready to go for the rotation, then, you know, do that with water. A lot of folks that have been canning for a while, you know, you're to the point where, okay, you're opening stuff and you're reusing those jars. You're opening stuff, you're washing them, you're recanning and reusing those jars, right? Once in a while, you'll lose a jar though, right? A jar will get chipped or it's been used too much. You can't get a seal anymore on the top, whatever the case may be. And you end up throwing that jar out if it cannot be used in another way in the home, which I would tell you probably can, okay? Let it sit on a table and hold pins, whatever, okay? Keep your jars, but utilize by making sure, because even folks like that have jars in rotation typically will have some sort of stockpile somewhere. I don't care if it's only 3 or 4 cases, they have that stockpile. Do something with it, okay? My next tip is my broth tip. Now, I've talked about this on numerous videos before, and that's one of my favorite preps to stockpile is broth. I love it for medicinal purposes, for sickness, for illness, for flu seasons. I keep a lot of it, and the hearty stuff I keep actually in my medical room because I want to have it separated and made sure that it's not used and that it's there for people that are sick, right? When we need it, okay? But I love keeping this in my preps. I cook a lot with broth in general for flavoring, for different things. A lot of recipes, if it calls for water, I will add broth to it. Even if it's a recipe that calls for broth and then it calls for water, oftentimes I'll see if there's another way that I can introduce that extra liquid that it wants, whether that's from a can of vegetables or some other thing that I've kept or used, okay? But I try to stay away from using water when I'm cooking as much as possible. Now, I know people are like, that's like impossible, especially when you're like boiling something. You have a main item that needs to be boiled. I would say practice making that item another way that takes less whatever it is, okay? Less water, and see what works for you. But for me, broth is kind of that substitute. I stockpile a lot of it, and I use that now for water, substituting water. Now, not all the time, okay? Because this is the thing, a lot of broths, you have to be careful, especially if it's store-bought. It has a lot of salt content, right? And so you have to be careful with what you're doing. There's low sodium ones that you can buy. Obviously, you can make your own, which is the best. And again, I'm a huge fan of making your own broth. It's very easy to do. You can get a ton of jars. And so utilize that. Use that when you can. For making food, especially like freeze-dried food that's already cooked, that you have bought from somewhere and it is already cooked and you're just rehydrating it, or you're just trying to heat it up to get it warm again. Broth is a nice way to bring that food back to life, okay? So I'm a huge fan of broth. Next thing I have is total meal prep, right? So if you're, let's say, into food preservation and you're just really into it right now, you're dehydrating, you're pressure canning, you're doing all this stuff. You're doing your butter, you're doing your meat, you're doing your vegetables, you're doing all the things, right? What I would say is try to utilize where you're doing full meal preservation, meaning you're pressure canning more soups, right? And you're making a soup that has the carbs in it, that has the vegetables in it, that has the seasoning, has the meat, has everything in one jar, and you're processing it, and then boom, it's done. And then that's a one jar that you're grabbing to feed your family, maybe two, depending if you have a crazy big family. But even if you have a crazy big family, I would still venture one quart-sized jar can feed a very large family, especially if you take that stew and soup, whatever you did, and you just pour it over rice, or you pour it over some more beans, whatever the case may be, okay? You can really, really stretch that stuff. But by already doing the hard work now, with getting everything together in one jar, it's less to think of, it's less jars to open. Now, I know that a lot of people like the opposite of this. They purposely, I'm only going to can my meat separate. I'm going to can my vegetables separate. I'm going to can, let's say, potatoes or whatever separate, right? So they say they do this for variety, right? You can grab now that jar and you're not, oh, this is only stew and that's all I made and that's my option. And folks will tell you, well, if you just take that stew meat, now I can make it into different things. I'm a fan of when things go south, you want life to be as easy as possible. And for me, an already put together meal that I do not have to think about is already ready to go. And for the record, baby, we'll eat beef stew every single day of our lives. You have some beef stew and some rice, we eat that every day, all day, right? So make the things that your family really, really enjoys and will eat over and over. And yes, I get that variety thing, which is phenomenal. But for me, I'm thinking long term, and I'm thinking that if there's chaos and there's other things that I need to put my effort towards, it's not going to be, okay, I have this beef, what should I do with it? Okay, do I have stuff to season it? Okay, do I have a vegetable? And then you're breaking out and opening more jars, okay? Jars, we just said, are clunky, and so making full meals in your jars, to me, is a great utilizer for your space, for everything, okay? So soups, stews, whole meals. Even if you're doing stuff where you're just a mom and you're trying to just meal prep and put it in the freezer, this is the same idea, okay? I'm talking about making it last for, a much longer on the shelf than, say, a freezer that you might lose and grid down. So think about that. But the idea is the same. It's to save you time later, okay? You can put your efforts somewhere else, okay? And then the last thing I have is prepping and shopping full meals. So the same idea where you're saying, so a lot of folks will say, okay, I'm prepping for certain things each payday. You might have a list of things you're going to get, or maybe it's an area of stuff you're going to get. Hey, this budget, I'm going to concentrate on all dairy stuff. I'm going to go get freeze-dried the eggs, the butter, the milk. I'm going to try to concentrate on all dairy stuff, and you get that. What I'm telling you to do is kind of the same thing, but concentrate on meals, okay? So if you know, hey, I'm trying to shoot for 6 months, or I'm trying to shoot for a year, let's take spaghetti, for example, knocking out that meal for the whole 6 months or the whole year, whatever you're trying to do. So you just basically take, how many times a month does my family eat spaghetti? Let's say we eat it once every 2 weeks. In a 2-week period, we eat spaghetti. So that's twice in the month. So then I would take, and get all the jars and get all the, noodles, and stockpile that, right? Get the meat, whatever meat you put in your spaghetti, get that, whether you're going to pressure can that meat, whether you're going to freeze that meat. But think about that meal. Think about how many, let's say you use a pound of meat, okay? How much and how hard would it be for you to get enough for a whole 6 months or a whole year? And you get that, right? It might look like a lot at first, but really it's not. Let's say it's a package of noodles, it's a jar, and it's a 1 pounder, okay? And it's twice. That's 24 jars of spaghetti, you know, and 24 noodle packs, right? Maybe you have the noodles and your family doesn't take the whole pack, okay? So that's only 12 packs of noodles. Really, it's not that much, but the mindset that goes with that is knowing that you know already as a mom or a dad how much spaghetti you eat in a month, and then go get that. Wait till that spaghetti sauce is on sale, 2 for $4 or even less. Go get it when it's individual jars and they're like $1.48 a piece. Go when there's a sale and then get all of that for the year. And then you know, okay, I'm done. Spaghetti's done. I have enough for the year. I don't have to worry about that. I have enough meat in the freezer, or I have enough meat that I've actually pressure canned, because about a pound of ground meat fits in a pint-sized jar when you're pressure canning. So process it, get it on the shelf, get it done, and know, okay, that it's done and you're ready to go, okay? Cut that in half. Maybe it's, you guys don't have meat at all. Maybe only half the jars are a meat sauce where the meat is already in the sauce and you don't have to worry about adding the meat, right? Or you're gonna go meatless, where you're half of those recipes, you're not gonna have meat. You're just gonna have the sauce, right? So think it through and prep for a whole meal and just get it done, right? Think about it in whole capacity of whatever your timeline is that you are concentrating on, whether that's, I'm going to get 3 months out, I'm going to get 6 months, I'm going to get a year out, whatever you're working on. Think about food and think about knocking things out. You will feel an incredible sense of like, wow, I have spaghetti for the whole year. Like that's beautiful. And that's a meal that's not that expensive and can easily be scaled down if you had to hit a situation where you had to ration or whatever the case may be, or you needed to use those pieces for different meals, right? Let's say you're like halfway through, you're like, we're sick of spaghetti. Those noodles can be used for all types of noodles. Make some garlic butter noodles, salt, pepper, garlic in a pot. Mix it up, then fry up the noodles after they're boiled. Delicious, okay? Use that sauce for a stew base or a soup base, okay? Tons of stuff that you can do. Obviously, the meat can be used for all certain types of things, okay? But if you think whole meal, it gives you a sense of accomplishment, especially when it's a meal that you guys know you eat, right? You know you're going to eat a lot of beef stew. How many times do you eat that? Get the ingredients to be able to pressure can that and pressure can that many jars of stew, right? Twice a month. Okay, 24 jars, right? 24 jars. Get it done. Boom, done. If you guys know that you eat something a lot, get it done. My example at the beginning, you know, maybe it's the area. Okay, this paycheck, we're concentrating on medical supplies. And you're just going and you're trying to fill your holes from medical supplies, and break it down even more. Maybe this budget, I'm only going to work on stuff for upset stomach and vomiting and nausea. I'm only going to work on those preps only, right? And then I'm going to work on the pain meds or the whatever, okay? So work on what you know you need to work on and in what areas you need to do, but think bigger picture so that you can knock it out and not feel like, man, I'm always buying batteries. I'm always buying batteries. I'm always buying batteries. But maybe if I budgeted to where, you know, I had a bigger pot of money that I just spent on batteries during that payday to take me further for the whole year. Think it out. How many times am I changing batteries? Just write it down every time you're changing batteries in something. Maybe that makes you change what you're actually using. uses too many batteries too often, what size batteries. Make sure that you have those batteries that you need for backup, but buy it in a bigger bulk and think long term. How many batteries do I need to get me through the next 6 months? How many do I need to make it through the first year? So think of stuff in whole meal, whole product type things to get it knocked out, so you're not feeling like, wow, this never ends. It doesn't end, baby. This is a lifestyle. But my point is the dread that you feel like, oh, I'm always doing this. It's like I just feel like a little gerbil in the thing, and I'm just go, and I'm always buying the same stuff, and it's just exhaustive, and I feel like I never get a break, okay? I hope that these tips helped you. If you didn't know about them already, if you haven't done any of these, give them a go. Hopefully in the comments, people are sharing their different tips. Hopefully it got your mind thinking of different things that you could do for you and your family, and that you in turn decide to share that with the group in the comments. I think it's very important that in a world where things are getting nasty, things are getting chaotic, people are not wanting to help people, people are not being kind, they're being rude, things are escalating out there on those streets of how people are treating each other. And here is a safe place. I don't care about the haters, for people that want to say negative things in the comments, but I do care about the love and the kindness that comes through with people sharing their information, and all of us learning. I learn something every single time. So continue to do that. Please push through the haters, push through the negativity, share information, because it's helpful to all of us so that we can all get through these harder times, okay? And times that are going to get nothing but harder, okay? So I hope you guys are well. I'll see you guys on the next video, and you take care. Bye.